Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 4, Episode 50. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion. Well, we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. The New York Metropolitans signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million contract. The Mets win the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and yet many have opined that by winning, the New York Metropolitans lost. That because of the amount of money being spent, the Mets have actually lost. That, dear listener, is 20th century thinking in a 21st century game. And we need a reset in our brain, dear listener. We need to rethink the way that we look at crime and punishment if we think that Luigi Mangione, the kid who shot this United Healthcare CEO, is some sort of criminal mastermind. We've been sold a bill of goods. Subconsciously, we accept that all of this technology actually works, when in fact, police solve most crimes today the same way they did 100 or 200 or 300 years ago. There's an eyewitness to the crime, and the eyewitness points out the suspect to the police. Thank you to all my longtime listeners. If you're new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends and enemies far and wide. This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. Shout out to Janelle for a big Patreon contribution this week, ensuring that the podcast will be ad-free for another full year. Off we go.
Act 1. The Mets sign Juan Soto to a $765 million contract and 20th century baseball writers cringe.
The New York Mets signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million contract. He's making $51 million a year to play baseball. And as many commentators have pointed out, it's very likely that he's not even going to technically play baseball. He's very likely to be slated as a designated hitter, which means Juan Soto will be playing for the New York Mets, doing nothing more than swinging his bat. And in compensation for as much, he'll be making $51 million a year. As much as that may sting some baseball purists, I am completely fine with this because the most valuable player in the National League this year is a guy named Shohei Ohtani, who did what? Who was a fucking designated hitter. Clearly, not only does the marketplace value someone who can get you consistent at-bats, particularly in clutch situations, not only during the regular season, but the postseason. The baseball writers seem to agree. The fans seem to agree. The perspective to me, looking at things from above instead of below, looking at things in judgment, it's just curious to me that you've got someone playing for the Los Angeles Dodgers, one of 3 most valuable players in a lineup, who is a designated hitter, and everyone argues it has to be him for the MVP. It can't be Francisco Lindor, someone who plays in the field and had one of the best seasons that he's had as a New York Met in the field. No, it has to be Shohei Ohtani simply because of the stats that he has as a designated hitter. Well, 2 can play at that game. The Mets have signed a 26-year-old who ostensibly will play the rest of his career in New York, although we know how those types of situations play out. A once great player reaching the zenith of his career may get shipped off, but that's not what you're thinking about when you sign a guy who is 26 years old, who has won a World Series, just played in a World Series, and capably, and well, he was very clutch throughout the course of the playoffs as a New York Yankee. My buddy Brian, who comes on and does the Two Idiots Discuss Sports podcast with me with regard to baseball, sent me a link. It was Buster Olney and I can't remember who the second guy was, and I'm not going to look it up. They were commenting that the loser of the Juan Soto sweepstakes was technically the winner. In other words, that the money being demanded and that the contract that was likely to be signed would be an albatross around the neck of the team that signed such a contract. And that although that's the market for a player like Soto with his accomplishments at his young age, that the loser of the Juan Soto sweepstakes would technically be the winner. And I am here to dispel such a notion. This is an asinine take that would work very well in 2007 or in 1997, or more particularly in 1989. I'm usually old man that yells at cloud. I'm usually old man kicks rocks, get out of my yard. But that is an old man yells at cloud, old man kicks rocks take. That kind of thinking is not in accord with 21st century baseball. This is the reason why baseball is in such dire straits right now as far as its competitive advantage, because you have people who still think, who still operate in the landscape of baseball, and they don't realize what year it is, and they don't realize what kind of market exists in Major League Baseball in the year of our Lord 2024. It has been less than 2 years since the New York Metropolitans signed Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer to enormous contracts, watched the team fall apart, trade those players away for pennies on the dollar. Granted, I think they got a haul in prospects and in draft choices, but the numbers look bad. They had to continue paying players that were no longer on their roster to the tune of, I believe, a total of $50 million. And that number may be on the conservative side. It may be well over $50 million. Did that sink the franchise? Are they now looking for the next 4 to 5 years to tighten their belt so that they can make money in light of this major loss? No, they're going out and they're spending. That's the new landscape in Major League Baseball. You have a team like the Dodgers. You have a team like the Yankees. You have a team like the Mets. Even the Red Sox will be in there on occasion where they're pushing payroll over $200 million. And because of the way the Dodgers are approaching things, well over $200 million. The luxury tax is not a deterrent. Making money every year is not a deterrent to this spending. To approach this type of signing from the mindset that, well, now you're not going to have enough money to go out and take care of your bullpen, which was a total mess last year. You're not going to be able to go out and get certain position players that you need. You're not going to be able to... No. They can spend without limit. The only deterrent is a luxury tax that really isn't a deterrent to someone with enough money. That's the new landscape of baseball. To say that a team lost the Juan Soto sweepstakes because they actually signed that player demonstrates that the person who said as much is still thinking that teams are looking to keep their payroll under $180 million. That somehow, some way, sometime in the future, that contract is going to be such a deterrent to the Mets going out and signing other players that they need at the time, whether that be in 8 years or 10 years or 12 years, ignoring the fact that that contract was just signed with the Mets having 2 players that they traded away, having dead money on their payroll to the tune of $50 or $60 million. Go on all the rants that you want. That's the landscape of Major League Baseball. There are a few teams that can absorb $100 million in dead money with all of the different players that they've let go over the course of the last 4 to 5 years and go out and sign a guy for $765 million and say, we're not done. We've got additional money to spend and we've got more players to acquire. The Buster-only approach to how baseball is being played out is almost like a lament. It's this person who has been involved in baseball for decades lamenting the fact that this is where we are and not proposing a solution, recognizing that the Major League Baseball landscape is going to be between the haves and the have-nots, that no one is going to be able to put a salary cap on these teams. I mean, I appreciate the member berries. I appreciate going down memory lane and talking about what it was like when teams had competitive advantages because they were really smart in the way they drafted and they were really smart and capable in the way they developed players. It's not like that anymore. I, too, lament the direction that baseball is going in. I don't think it's healthy for baseball for it to become like the top of the English Premier League or any of these major European soccer leagues where now you have a championship league. You have an international tournament of some of the best club soccer teams in the world, and it's all the same teams because they spend the most money. That isn't where baseball is headed. Baseball has arrived. The Dodgers are here. The Mets are here. The Yankees are here. In many respects, I have the same feelings about this signing that I did about Newcastle United being acquired by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. Yes, I'm happy, but I'm also sad that this is now how the game is going to be played. One of the reasons why this Mets team, this past year's team, was so easy to root for is because you had a bunch of kids who had come up out of AAA. They'd been brought up in the Mets farm system. You had a bunch of people who had what you would call journeyman type careers. They've had success for a little while in other places. That success fell off. They bounced around. They came and they had one of their best seasons in their career as a New York Met. These are people who are easy to root for. I don't know what it's like to be a Dodgers fan. Thank God. I don't want to know. And I think you could say the same thing for the Yankees. What's it like having all these hired mercenaries on your team every year and then trying to convince yourself that this is some sort of cohesive unit of guys who've come together for one common goal and share some kind of common interest? It's hard to believe that there's a lot of chemistry and camaraderie on a team when all these players grew up in other franchises and other farm systems, and they're all making between $25 and $50 million a year. Freddie Freeman is a great example of this. He didn't want to be a Dodger. He wanted to still be an Atlanta Brave. Brian has come on to the podcast and talked about the debacle that was his negotiation between the agent that he had at the time, the Braves, and the Dodgers. He seemed pretty happy to be a Los Angeles Dodger when he won the World Series. But what is the chemistry like in that locker room? And does it really matter when you win? Winning solves everything. What happens when they stop winning? There's a documentary on Netflix about David Beckham, and I've talked about it before. But Beckham goes from one of the most elite clubs in the English Premier League, Manchester United, to one of the biggest clubs in the world, although Manchester United is one of the biggest clubs in the world. This is one of the most marquee premier clubs in the world, Barcelona. And you see what a machine it was, that no player on that team was a role player. Everyone had a major contract. They were all considered the best or one of the best at each position that they had on the pitch, and how difficult it was for them to gel, to mesh together, and to play as a team and to be successful. Brian likes to say, you can't buy a team. Well, I always agreed with that because I'm a Buster Olney too. I want things to be a certain way. I want to agree that you're going to have a higher likelihood of winning in any sport if you've got homegrown talent, if there's chemistry in the locker room, people genuinely care about one another, and they're all rowing in the same direction. And unfortunately, I think that this signing, this Juan Soto signing, is just the tip of the iceberg. That we're going to see more and more teams in North American sports look like teams in international club soccer. It's just an assembly of some of the best talent in the world that money can buy, and they're thrown out on the field and they're told, go win at all costs. And if you don't, it's a complete and total failure. I don't know if that's going to be fun to root for. I know it's easier to root against because I've done it for so long, but here I am now. I'm the guy who's rooting for the team that's going to become that thing. I don't know if I like it, and I'm certain that I don't like what it is going to do to Major League Baseball.
Act 2. The murder of the United Healthcare CEO is another brick in the wall of the lie we've been fed regarding modern technology.
We really need to reframe the way that we view technology in our lives and its capacity and capability. Some guy murders a high-profile executive in Manhattan, New York, one of the most monitored, filmed places in all of planet Earth. He gets away with it, and he wasn't careful. Let's be clear. This whole narrative about how careful he was, and he may have been a hired assassin and blah, 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 now that all the facts are starting to come out, he wasn't that careful. And by way of the events that transpired after that assassination, it's clear to me, at least, dear listener, as it is starting to become to more and more people, that this kid wanted to be caught. That's not going to be the point of the piece. Yes, that could be an angle that I take, and we could have a discussion about whether or not this kid wanted to be caught. He wanted to have a forum and an audience to voice his grievances against the American healthcare system, the way that United Healthcare managed its claims, what have you. This kid is escaping on a public bus, and the bus stops in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, so that the passengers can eat at a McDonald's. He goes into the McDonald's. He's recognized by a patron in the McDonald's. The patron calls the police. That's how this kid gets caught. With all of the tools and all of the technology that's at the disposal of law enforcement, what did this boil down to? An eyewitness sees the guy, calls the police. President-elect Trump is playing golf at his golf course. A Secret Service agent sees somebody lurking in the bushes a couple of holes up from where Trump is actually going to play, calls out to the guy. The guy's got a gun. The Secret Service agent takes a couple of shots at him, misses. The guy runs off. He gets into his car and drives away, and he's gone. This isn't a high-speed pursuit. He's gone. Police are freaking out. They put out an APB, but they also put out something on the news, and what happens? A bystander who thought that that guy looked suspicious took down his make and model of his car, and I believe either all of or part of his license plate. That's how the police catch that guy. With all the tools and all the technology at the disposal of law enforcement, namely the Secret Service, protecting a guy who is running for president of the United States, who had already been shot at by an attempted assassin. How do they catch this guy? Eyewitness. Oh yeah, I saw that guy. He looks suspicious. Here's the make and model of his car. Here's his license plate. Oh yeah, that's right. This is a guy in President-elect Trump that had already been shot at by a would-be assassin. And how did that guy get identified? Was it all of the different suspicious things that that person did in the 36 hours leading up to the assassination attempt? All of the different interactions that he had with law enforcement? No, it was people screaming, hey, there's a guy with a gun climbing onto a building. Hey, there's a guy with a gun on top of the building. Hey, there's a guy with a gun popping off shots at the president-elect. Or if you're looking at it from a contemporaneous standpoint to that event happening, at the former president. Law enforcement was only really alerted to the threat when the shots started to pop off and a sniper team said, wow, that's odd. There seems to be somebody firing rifle rounds at this presidential candidate. Maybe we should do something about that. With all of the tools and all of the technology at their disposal, how was law enforcement alerted to that threat? Yes, it was by bystanders. It was by witnesses. But really, nothing was done until the guy started popping off rounds. I believe we've given away a considerable amount of our personal freedom, of our personal information, of our daily whereabouts. We've done so under the guise that this is going to help law enforcement keep us safe. This is going to protect us. We are fed stories in the media, whether it be the legacy media or on social media, every day about how quickly technology is advancing and how much AI and other technological tools are going to be a part of our daily lives in the very near future, and how all of these things are going to either be a dystopian future for us because they're going to be able to be used by the government to monitor us, or they're going to be some sort of George Jetson style technological lifestyle utopia where we're going to have everything basically done for us hand and foot by machines. I hate to be a curmudgeon, dear listener. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think it's all bullshit. I think it's all absolute and total Silicon Valley bullshit. They've been fed free money for close to 20 years and they don't want the spigot to be turned off. And the reality is a lot of this stuff doesn't work. And if it does work, it doesn't work in the way that we've been sold it does work. And I'll take that a step further. Millions of people love CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, a show on CBS, an atrocious television program. It is beloved. All of these murder mystery shows. Angela fucking Lansbury is coming back on television. She's going to reprise her role in Murder, She Wrote. You've got Inspector Clouseau, Sherlock Holmes. Whether in the realm of reality TV, of fictional television, movies, books, we love this murder mystery thing, and the good guys always win in the end. Sometimes through the use of technology, sometimes just with the brilliant, calculating mind, these detectives sift through the clues and they come to the correct conclusion. They get the bad guy in the end. Let me dispel this myth, dear listener, whether it be in 1624 or 1724, 1824, 1924, 2024. Do you know how police solve crimes? Someone who was there, who witnessed it, walks up to the policeman and says, "I saw it all go down. That person did it." The end. The end. All of your clue, your sleuthing, this reliance on technology, it's all bullshit. That is all bullshit. And you want to know how I know it's bullshit? Because it works in television, in books, and in movies. It's a fiction that we've all wanted to believe for all of our lives. It has been perpetuated in popular culture, in the West in particular, for hundreds of years. And it is complete and total bullshit. That murder mystery novel, that reality television program, that CSI episode, that Murder, She Wrote, it's going to be a hell of a lot less exciting if the conclusion of the episode is eyewitness see, eyewitness tell, eyewitness testify at trial. Has it not dawned on us collectively that the reason why there's so many cold case files and the reason why there are so many of these murder mystery type shows is that where there's no eyewitness, the police have a hell of a hard time solving any of these crimes, and they can lie dormant for decades, or in the situation where it becomes a serial killer, that person goes on to commit numerous additional crimes without being caught for an extended period of time. None of these people are criminal geniuses. It's just not easy to catch someone who's committed these types of heinous crimes if there's not a witness. It's particularly difficult if there isn't a body as well. Is the kid who shot this United Healthcare CEO a criminal mastermind? No, he's not. Did he want to get caught? Look, to the extent that that even matters, I think that he did, but I don't think that there was any premeditated thought in that regard to the extent that now we're looking at this situation. To state it another way, if this was a person who was dead set against being caught for the crime that he committed, he wouldn't have made so many mistakes being caught on camera in the hours and days leading up to the crime. He wouldn't have done something so stupid as to use the fake ID that he had used in New York City and given it to the cops when he was approached in Pennsylvania. He could have used his real ID in Pennsylvania, and the police would not have known anything wrong or different otherwise. Many of the actions that he took do not lead to him being a criminal mastermind or him having thought out the crime as well as he is being credited for having done by the legacy media. The very fact that he wasn't caught immediately has led a number of people to then speculate about the level of planning and care that was taken in the commission of this crime. No, dear listener, flip that on its head. This is a testament to the fact that even with all that technology and even with all of the information that we've given away about ourselves, all of the freedom that we've been willing to give up, it doesn't make a difference. If there's not an eyewitness, the police have a hell of a hard time in finding and catching criminals. Just like Superman isn't going to come flying out of the sky to save us from our stupid decisions, we should not let our desires, we should not let the things that we are attracted to in popular culture lead us to believe this is how things actually operate in real life. We have given away a lot of our personal freedom in exchange for safety, in exchange for someone else to take control and make sure everything's all right, and they're not any good at it. Sorry, folks, we did not get the benefit of the bargain. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.